Player, player,
Player, player, player, player, player.
The crowd's chant rattled the steep wooden grandstands of the towering Pleasure Pit arena as Flora entered. I'm the player, she thought. Flora straightened her back as she walked, the way she'd been taught by Lady Leaf, her hunched old manners mistress in the glade, who whacked her arse with a narrow branch whenever she stuck it out too far. A noble girl's walk. The rows of benches climbed precipitously above the compact arena floor so that the looming crowd stared almost straight down at her. The entire place was splashed with colors that defined its sections. A piney needle green section, a buttercup yellow section, a blood red section, more colors than she had time to count. District banners and elaborate symbols hung at intervals and fluttered with the stomping of hundreds of feet. A black sheep on a white background, a beaten anvil on red, a purple goblet, tangled bones, and more. Flora's head thumped with the pounding rhythm of the pit, and her eyes darted amongst the hundreds of shouting and ogling faces hanging over her. The air was heavy with lavish perfumes and pipe smoke that barely masked the smell of acrid breath, flatulence, and the hot sweat of fleshy crevices. The suffocating intensity of it all was disorienting, and so Flora focused on the set of risers cordoned off with a burgundy drapery at the center of the far arena wall, the Duke's box. The box's gaily garbed revelers sat or crouched or leaned or stood, waving their arms and cheering. Many were masked in the tradition of the carnival district. Some were dressed as big cats with cloth ears and large furry mitts for paws. A nude woman was painted a tawny color and dotted with distinctive black spots of Tamar, the cat tamer's massive tiger, Bert. Half of another woman's face was painted with obscene streaks of red and grotesque purple smudges, and Flora realized that the woman meant to imitate her. She mocks my ruined face. And at the center of it all, sprawled across a huge golden ball 10 hands tall, lay their Duke. The mad fool. Duke Carni wore a quartered surcoat. He held a huge silver goblet, or perhaps a medium-sized one. And he was draped over the priceless ball like a great lounging cat. The 4 quarters of his black and white coat featured the arse ends of 4 beasts, a trotter horse, a shaggy sheep, a plump pig, and a wolf. He's mocking the stables, sheep, butcher, and furrier districts all in one go, Flora thought. Flora scanned his retinue. She recognized Duke Wine nearby, but then everybody recognized Duke Wine. Next to him sat a bare-chested islander chief with a sharp-toothed necklace, and beyond the island savage was a tall, striking woman. Too tall. She had a masculine lump in her throat and wide shoulders. She's not a woman, Flora realized. She was a man in woman's garb. Flora stared. She was a man in familiar woman's garb. Flora's heart raced, and then her blood boiled. Angelique! The sight of the bitch dog who had tried to sell her to pirates a year earlier sent Flora's fingers groping for the dagger that Toby had given her. It was not weighted for throwing, but Flora judged that she could vault into the box before the guardsman stopped her, and I could kill her. It took an effort for Flora to stay her hand and turn her scarred cheek toward the box instead. She won't recognize my damaged side. Angelique wore a shimmering kirtle of garment district make, but she was definitely a man. Flora could see that now. Indeed, she wondered how she had missed it before. I was a naive squirrel from the forest back then, she thought. Flora considered retreating to the player's room, but it was too late. She already stood before the mad fool, and the pit was roaring for her. Stories of what happened to performers who disappointed the crowd in the pleasure pit made her shudder. It wasn't Carni she feared. He wasn't likely to whip her arse himself if she failed, at least not outside the bedroom if stories were true. His power came from giving his audiences what they wanted, and pleasure pit audiences were rabid. And so, Flora sang, I am the maiden fair, and I am a fair duke, Carni interrupted. He leapt suddenly to his feet atop the gold ball. The mad fool tilted one way, and then the other, as the ball shifted beneath him. And Flora realized that the massive metal sphere was not stationary. He's balancing on it. Ah, but where are my manners? Let us welcome the singer with two faces. A chorus of vocalists, including Anjali, echoed his greeting. From her good side, welcome, pretty lady. And from her wounded side, welcome, ugly hag. Carni began to walk on the heavy ball, rolling it beneath him along the bench and through the box, splintering wood as his guests in the gallery dove out of the way to avoid being flattened. I've heard so much about you, two-faced girl, Carni continued. From here, from there, from everywhere. You wouldn't believe the things or the where from which I've heard them. But I'll tell you one where. I've heard about you from my special guest up there. The mad fool directed Flora's attention to a bench higher in his private box, and there, to Flora's shock, sat the boy Duke of the Iron District. But Toady and I hid him away, she thought. The Iron Boy, Carni announced. We found him dicing in an alley, of all things, the wee dicing Duke. He knows you, you know, and he says you're the best singer that he's ever seen sing. Oh, I hope so, because tonight we have such an amazing pit show. First, the return of the Iron Boy. And then tomorrow, the great cat tamer and his tigers, such big, beautiful pussies, meow and row, row. Now you, and that's not all. Oh no, that's not all at all. The mad fool leaped in the air and flipped backwards, alighting on the ball once more and teetering until it stabilized. The gate. The gate! An iron gate swung open in the pit wall, and three foolish guardsmen in black and white checkered loincloths with slick, oiled bodies sprang out, leading a man bound by a rope. They were young and muscular, and each carried an oaken jester staff with a carved fool's head. Flora watched them come, careful to keep her burned cheek toward Anjali. The lead guard held one end of the rope, and the other disappeared into the bound man's mouth. He was shaved bald, and the rope was tied to a bar inside of his mouth like a horse's bit. His disguise was extravagant, but Flora recognized him. Toady. The foolish guard had captured her friend. Carni knew him too. He gave Toady a staccato burst of claps, dancing from foot to foot like an excited child atop his wobbling ball with impossible balance. My favorite second, Carni brayed. Then he glanced at his own second, Anjali, and caught himself. I mean my second favorite second, of course, my large lady. Anjali smiled. She should be happy. Happy she's not at the end of my blade, Flora thought. Toady tried to speak, but he could only mumble around the bit and the knotted rope in his mouth. Carni cocked a palm to his ear and feigned trying to hear. What's that? What's that you say? You were protecting the Iron Boy and not kidnapping him? How noble for a commoner. And good for you, Toadstool. But we all know what happens to a second when the Duke he serves dies, don't we?
Death! 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 Death!
Carni nodded his head in rhythm with them as their excitement grew. The mad fool was a showman. He used a dramatic pause to let the tension build the same way Flora did in her own performances. The crowd's chant shook the pit. They can feel something coming, Flora thought. And Duke Glass is dead, continued Carni. So very, very dead. Shall we send his toadish second back to the Glass District to be dragged across the crystal courtyard and cut into festive red ribbons?
No!
They are a well-trained audience, Flora thought. No, indeed, Carni agreed. Bring him to me. The trio of half-naked guardsmen dragged Toady before the gallery with the rope, so that the bit yanked at his cheeks. He drooled and spat blood on the pit floor. I love this man, I surely do, but you can't hop away, my froggy friend. Even here, in this foolish district, we know the law. And the law is the law, is
The law is the law!
Toady stood firm before Carni. He didn't grovel or cringe. So good to see you again, Toadsy. You've certainly changed since you served Duke Glass so faithlessly. Love what you've done with the hair. I hardly recognized you. Carni caressed the smooth ball beneath him and then spun it around. I'm surprised you were hiding my favorite little fugitive in my own district. You know that's a no-no. Toady spoke then, his voice muffled but audible through his full mouth. You put me between a hammer and an anvil, good Duke. I hid the boy to protect him, and yet you call me a kidnapper. I can't be both savior and scoundrel. Tell me I'm wrong.
Wrong! Wrong! Wrong!
The audience has spoken. And it is my great displeasure to tell you, you are wrong totally. In the show, the audience makes you what you are. And they can unmake you. So sorry. It's the fate of the player in this great comedy of life, my secondary friend. Into the pit! The large loincloth guards hauled Toady up by the arms so that he dangled between them. I assert my district's privilege. We will pass judgment on Duke Glass's second here at the carnival where he's been caught. I swear that his trial shall be swift and just and fabulously entertaining. Flora watched as the foolish guard marched Toady, the man who saved her life, to the center of the pit. He was going to be punished for wrongs in which she had a hand, or perhaps two hands. They're also stealing my show, she thought ridiculously. Duke Carnival! Flora called, using the mad fool's full title. His attention swung to her, and he smiled gently, rising atop one leg on the ball, with his arms outstretched like opposing swords. Apologies for the interruption of your performance, my bifurcated butterfly. Life is but a show. Sometimes we direct it, but today the show directs us. I must ask you to wait. We must try the toad for his crimes, an act I cannot delay. My revelers will not stand for it.
Trial! Trial! Trial!
Or perhaps they will stand for it. Then Flora gestured at Toady, and I will stand for him. The power of song silenced the mad fool, and her warbled words echoed up through the pleasure pit, a cozy arena cleverly designed to amplify its performer's voice over the rumble of the crowd. Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned on her. Carni made a surprised face, his mouth pinched into a tidy little O. He was not acting, Flora realized. He is actually surprised. His huge ball rolled over slowly until he toppled off. The mad fool recovered, just in time to land on his feet atop the arena wall at the front of the Duke's box. Let me be as clear as glass here. Do you, starred singer, take this man's place at trial, for better or for worse, until death does you part? And Flora sang, I do.
I know, you keep stopping me. So much alchemist here.
Yeah. So, yeah.